Start in a seated position on your mat and maybe do some head rolls and just start to find a little space as you start your practice. Maybe do some torso twists, make some circles with your torso, maybe do some kind of seated cat-cows, breathing in, inflating the abdomen and releasing. Any kind of side bending, side twisting, a little spinal twist, or a nice side body stretch. Just kind of move around in that seated position. Get the blood flow going. Maybe a little spinal twist to the left. And then spinal twist to the right. This entire session is on the mat. Sometimes you don't feel like standing up, but you want to move. So this is a good practice to do for that. Come to a forward fold in your seated position. Taking in breaths here in that forward fold. And release. Stretch arms tall overhead. Taking in a few breaths here, maybe twisting just a little bit, shifting your weight. And go ahead and roll back, knees bent. Pull your heels into your hips. Reach for your heels with your hands. We're going to rise up into a hip raise. Keeping everything strong and tight. If you can roll your shoulders under and clasp your hands. Trying to keep your palms together so everything's super tight, using all those muscles, engaging the glutes for this nice hip raise. And go ahead and roll one shoulder out and then the other, slowly lowering the spine all the way down to the ground. Kick your legs up straight up above you. This is going to be a bunch of core work, and slowly lower those legs halfway and then a little bit more all the way down to just above the mat. Draw them back up, straight up above you. Again, lower legs straight, everything tight, keeping that core super tight. Lower your legs to the mat, but don't touch the mat, and then back up to center. Go ahead and hug the knees into chest. And stretch the legs out overhead for some scissor kicks. Scissor kicking over the head, one foot over the other, and slowly draw the legs down, hovering just above your mat in a scissor kick. And slowly scissor kick your legs up overhead. And again, scissor kicking down, keeping everything super tight. Hover just above your mat, scissor kicking, and draw the legs back up, scissor kicking all the way up overhead. And one more time, scissor kicking down, close to that mat. And scissor kick back up. Go ahead and hug knees to chest. And then drop the knees. Keep your knees bent, feet on your mat. Draw your heels into your hips for another hip raise. Go ahead and rise up. If you can, roll your shoulders under and clasp your hands together. These movements combine all of our deep core muscles, all the muscles in the hips and surrounding the spine, making everything strong. Stay up in that hip raise, keeping everything tight. And slowly unroll the shoulders and roll the spine down to the ground. Now we're going to combine the leg raise and the scissor kicks together. So hug your knees to chest. And shoot those legs straight up above you, slowly lowering them a third of the way, a third of the way and down to your mat without touching the mat. Scissor kick up to legs above you, and then scissor kicking legs down, hovering just above the mat. Raise the legs straight, no scissor kicking, overhead. And then slowly lower the legs to hovering just above mat. Start scissor kicking again and draw those legs up overhead, scissor kicking, and then drop the legs closer towards the mat, scissor kicking, and pause. Keep those legs straight, hovering just above the mat, and draw them up overhead, and then slowly lower them, hovering just over the mat, and release. Stretching arms out long. And come to a seated position and curl over into child's pose. Spread those knees out, toes touching. Push those forearms and hands down into the mat. This is an active child's pose, so what I try and do is get into a comfortable position and then push my forearms and my hands, pushing my hips back so my butt hits my heels. Taking breaths here. And slowly rise up to a neutral tabletop. And go ahead and thread the left arm under the right arm, stacking the shoulders, supporting yourself with your right arm bent and your hand on the mat, keeping your hips up high. This is a nice side stretch, spinal stretch, shoulder stretch. Taking some extended breaths here. And rise up to neutral tabletop and thread the right arm under the left, stacking the shoulders, bending the left arm with the palm on the mat. And go ahead and come up to a neutral tabletop. Draw the right knee forward on your mat just a few inches, and then drop the right elbow and hand to the ground. This is a nice side body stretch, and if you can raise that left arm overhead. Back up to neutral tabletop, draw the left knee forward, drop the left elbow and plant the palm, and raise the right hand overhead. And coming back to neutral tabletop. Do some cat-cows here. Inhale, fill up the abdomen, and then arch the back and let all that air out. And again, breathing in and exhaling all that air out. Come to neutral tabletop for some bird dogs. Kick the right leg back behind you, left arm in front of you, holding tight, pushing that right palm into the ground and using that left quad as support. So pushing back and out and front and out. And release. Right arm out, left arm kicked back behind you. And release. Right leg back, left arm out in front. Again, using opposite sides of the body to push out and find balance and strength. And one more time on the other side, left leg back, right arm out. And go ahead and release. Curl the toes and elevate the knees just a few inches above the mat. This is a more engaged tabletop. Keeping everything tight, everything balanced. And release the knees. Drop down into child's pose for just a moment. And back up to neutral tabletop. Curl the toes and elevate the knees a few inches off the mat. And try not to arch the back. Keep the back straight and strong. And drop the knees into child's pose for a moment. And again, back to neutral tabletop. Curl the toes and elevate the knees, hovering just above the mat. This truly engages everything. Feels awesome. Go ahead and drop the knees into child's pose. Oh, here the dogs really start to freak out over a little gecko behind me. I had to split the video and yell at them for a second. Again, up into neutral tabletop, elevate the knees. And drop the knees and release into child's pose. And come up out of child's pose, standing on your knees. Kick your right leg out to your side with toes facing forward. We're going to do a nice side stretch here. Right arm cascading down the right leg, left arm overhead. And switch sides. Left leg kicked out to the left, toes facing forward. Right arm overhead as you get a nice side body stretch. And back to center, and one more time on the right. Right leg kicked out, toes facing forward. Left arm overhead for a nice side stretch. And again on the left leg kicked out to the side, toes facing forward. Right arm overhead for a nice side body stretch. And draw the left leg in. Kick the right leg out in front of you, foot with weight on the heel, and lean forward into a forward fold. This is a kneeling split. Take this as easy as you can. If you tend to be tight in your hamstrings, you can use yoga blocks to prop yourself up. But again, this is a kneeling split. Arms straight up overhead, balancing for just a moment. And draw that right leg back under you. Kick the left leg out in front of you on your heel into a kneeling split. Palms planted on the mat. If you can take your nose to your shin or your knee, do so. Otherwise, just hang out here for a nice hamstring stretch. And again, arms up overhead. Balance here for just a moment. And draw the left leg back. So you're kneeling on both knees. Maybe do some side stretches, just reaching one arm down the leg and then the other. And go left and right. Even kneeling is good balance for you. It might seem like you're pretty sturdy, but anytime you're shifting weight from one side to the other, that's good balance for you. And go ahead and lean back, both hands on both heels for a nice arching your back, opening up your shoulders and your chest. Maybe raise the right arm overhead for a little bit more of a side body stretch. And drop the right arm. Lift the left arm overhead. Looking up to the sky if you can. And back to dropping both arms on your heels. And come forward into child's pose. Touch the toes, spread the knees, and actively push your forearms and your palms into your mat, pushing your hips back onto your feet. We're going to take a few moments here, so deeply breathe in and out. Again, a few more moments here in child's pose. This is an active child's pose, pushing your forearms and your palms into your mat. Finding that stretch, pushing your hips down into your feet. And come up to neutral tabletop and pop up into high plank. We're going to do about a minute plank here. Plank is just such a great core stability builder. It's so simple, and the longer you can be up in this position, the more balance, the more core strength. Don't drop your hips. Don't arch your back. Make sure to keep everything strong. Pushing your hands against your mat, pushing your shoulders away from the ground, keeping those hips high. And just a little bit longer in this plank. Again, pushing the shoulders away from your mat, pushing your hands against your mat, keeping your hips high without arching your back. And drop the knees. And come to flat position, laying down on your mat with your elbows at your sides and your hands just about at your shoulders. We're going to do a little mini cobra here. You're going to zip up your legs and your feet. Keep everything tight and just raise your chest and your head, using those lower back muscles to really tighten everything in. And release, forehead to mat. And again, zip up the back, tighten everything from toes to glutes to lower back. And raise the head and chest off your mat, using those lower back muscles, not necessarily using your hands to push yourself up. And release. And again, zipping up toes, calves, quads, everything, using all those lower back muscles. Head up and release. Go ahead and stretch your arms out into a T shape. Bend the left knee and draw your left foot back behind you. Go very slowly on this. This is an awesome spinal twist, but it can be a little tricky to get in and out of. Opens up the chest. And slowly bring your left leg back over and down to the ground. Bend your right knee and let it drift behind you, drawing your right foot as back and high as you can. Again, this is a great chest opener, opens up the shoulders. So be really careful here. I have to go really slowly getting in and out of this pose, or I start to feel it. And go ahead and come back to center, laying on your mat. Put your cheek on your mat and take a breath or two. And go ahead and push yourself into a seated kneeling position, hands to heart. Namaste.